This is J. Krishnamurti's first talk in New Delhi, 1962.
For most of us, language is the only means of communication. We cannot communicate any other way, and therefore language plays an important part in all communion and communication. Of course, it would be very good if 2 or 3 of us could get together quietly and discuss these matters very deeply, but unfortunately that's not possible. So we have to establish from the very beginning, it seems to me, a right relationship between the speaker and yourself. These talks are in no way meant to be propaganda, nor are they to tell you what you should do or in what manner you should think, or direct you to a particular course of action, or to a series of ideas. Because ideas are merely thought verbalized, and ideas in themselves have very little significance. They do not bring about a radical change. They do not transform the mind totally. And those who depend on ideas as a means of stimulation to bring about a change in themselves will invariably leave this Samyana empty-handed, because we are not dealing with ideas at all. We are dealing with something much more profound, much more enduring, whose import is deep revolution in the quality of the mind itself. And such a revolution cannot be brought about by words, nor by ideas. Words have meaning. Words are not the thing. And ideas, if you observe very closely, conform to a pattern of thought. And ideas and words do not play a deep, significant part in our lives, at least in the lives of those who are very thoughtful, serious. So we must, at the very beginning, understand each other. That this is not a meet gathering to convert you to any particular idea, to a particular way of thinking. On the contrary, we'll go into matters that you will have to apply your whole being, and not merely intellectually accept or deny certain words. And you also have to bear in mind that we are not speaking as authority. There is no authority in spiritual matters. There is no following, no leader, no guru. One has to find the light for oneself. And what we are going to try throughout these talks is to establish clearly for ourselves not only the impediments imposed upon us by society, but also to discover the bondages the mind is held to. And so, we are going to discuss primarily in what way to bring about a new mind, a totally different mind, a different way of thinking, a different attitude, different evaluation. And for that you need a very clear, precise thinking. And for that you need also the capacity to face life totally alone. And it is not possible, surely, is it, that the collective mind is never capable of revolution. It's only the individual mind, the mind that is not caught up in society, in the morality of society, in the tradition of society, in the ways of society. There must be individuality to bring about a radical revolution and not conform to a pattern laid down by society. Such a mind cannot possibly do what it will, bring about a lasting, a revolutionary change in the world. So we must differentiate between the collective action and individual action. We are not individuals at all. We are the result of the collective. You are the result of your society, of the religion, the education, the climate, the food, the clothes, the tradition in which you have been brought up. You are all that. And to think that you are an individual is really quite absurd. If you go very deeply into the matter, you may have a name, a different body, a bank account, a certain superficial qualities. But essentially, deep down, the whole totality of the mind is conditioned by the society in which it has been brought up. And to be aware of such conditioning and to break through that, break through the encrustation of centuries of the past. It is that quality, that intensity, that understanding that brings about an individuality. And it is only the individual that can find out what is the real, not the collective. It's only the individual can find out if there is or if there is not what you call God. Not a collective mind. A collective mind can only repeat the word, but the word God is not God. The collective mind can read the Gita, quote the Upanishads and all the religious authorities. But such a mind can never do what it will, ever find out what is true. It's only the mind that has broken through tradition, shattered the values imposed upon it by society, break away from the past. It's only such a mind that can find out. And we're concerned with discovery and not with assertions or agreements or disagreements. We have to find out for ourselves But it is almost impossible to find what is true if there is such thing as the timeless, as something beyond the measure of the mind. If you belong to a nation, if you are a Hindu, a Parsi, a Sikh, a Christian, if you belong to any organized religion, because belief and dogma are essentially in the way of discovery. It's only a mind that perceives all the falseness, the conditioning influences, the propaganda which is called religion. It's only when such a mind that breaks through that can find out. But that requires a great deal of insight, a great deal of inquiry, an alert awareness of things as they are, and not acceptance. Because to accept or to deny is a matter of mere verbal exchange. But if one really sets about to find out, because we must find out, we must question it, been established. Because everybody must be aware of the world situation. Everybody must be aware of the deterioration. Religions have failed totally. Education has not brought peace to the world, as it was once thought, that given information to man, man will be so civilized that he'll have no war, that there'll be no nationalities. But all that's gone overboard. You have every means of communication. There are extraordinary changes taking place. The rapidity of the change is far more significant than the change itself. There is no peace in the world, and no politician of any kind will ever bring peace to the world. Because the politician, like most people in the world, who are also partially politicians, are concerned with the immediate well-being, with the immediate action. And they're not concerned with the long view. As you observe your own life, you will see you're not concerned with the totality of living. You're only concerned with the immediate, your job, your position, your family, this and that, which is all in terms of the immediate. And the person who is concerned with the immediate is obviously the politician. And the so-called social religious leaders, they're also concerned with the immediate. And to bring about a radical revolution, and such a revolution is necessary. One may not be aware of the actual deterioration in the quality of the mind. Because if you observe, there is less and less freedom in the world. democracies talk about freedom, but the party rules. You must comply, you must conform, either to the party or to the tradition. And conformity to tradition is obviously a deadly thing, because it does not help man to see clearly, to discern radically. And seeing not only the state of the world, its misery, its confusion, and those who are thinking fairly intelligently deny leadership, deny authority. And therefore there is more confusion. We'll begin again. I'm sure you must have asked yourselves the question, what is to be done in a world that is rapidly on the decline? What can one do? What can one do about war, about the threat of the bomb, about the tyranny and the lessening of freedom? And what can one individual do about this appalling starvation in the whole of the East, the poverty, the degradation, the inhumanity of it all? What can you and I do? Or is it the action of the government, and which has nothing to do with individual action at all? And also you must have asked yourself, seeing what the world is, whether there is actually a reality, something which can be experienced, which can be uncovered. And you can only ask these questions when one is very deeply dissatisfied, when there is deep discontent. But most of us, when we are discontented, find easy channels for contentment, easy ways to be satisfied. And I do not know if you have not noticed, the more there is confusion, the more there is uncertainty, the greater the search for authority, the greater the reliance on that which has been the past. And observing all these things that are actually taking place, the facts, not the opinions about the facts, not your agreement or the translation of the fact according to your own background, but to understand actually the fact that is the facts that are taking place in the world. Surely you must have a new mind to confront these facts, to understand them, and to break them down, and to bring about a different way of life. Surely, sir, the problem is this, is it not? There is the immense, untold centuries of the past, the weight of the past, which confronts the future, which is unknown. a blank wall of which you know nothing, which you translate in terms of the past, and therefore you think you know, but you do not actually know. And that seems to me, that's really the central issue. For a man who is really thought, really felt, deeply asked himself questions that are not answerable. Because most of us ask questions in order to find an answer. May I say here, there is a way of listening and there is a way of merely hearing words. The capacity to listen is an art. Because if you listen without translation, without interpretation. You listen to find out, not to agree or disagree, which is quite immature, but to really find out. And so you have to listen. But you cannot listen if you're all the time translating what you hear in terms of what you know. What you know, you're acquainted with. Perhaps you don't know what is being said. Therefore you have to listen and not interpret it according to your background. And therefore, while you are interpreting according to your background, you have stopped listening. And I wonder if we ever listen at all to anything. Because most of us don't want to listen, because it's too dangerous. It will shatter the things that we hold dear, the things that we are accustomed to. And so we hear words, and so intellectually agree or disagree. And then we say, how am I to bridge action with what I think? I intellectually agree with what you are saying, but how am I to carry it out? There is no such thing as intellectual understanding. You only mean really, you hear the words, and the words have some meaning similar to your own, and that similarity you call understanding, intellectual agreement. There is no such thing as intellectual agreement. Either you understand or do not understand. And to understand deeply, really with all your being, you have to listen. Have you ever listened to your wife, to your husband, to your child, or even to your boss? We daren't listen. And when you do try, perhaps you will another time, and perhaps you will here also listen, actually, then you will find out that in the very act of listening, a deep change is going on. The very act of listening produces that change. Not agreement with an idea. Because when you do so listen, You are able to discern what is true and what is false. When you listen with all your being, with all your senses, with your mind, with your heart, with what you hear, what you feel, everything totally. And as you listen, you will find out for yourself what is true. And the act of listening is the act of discovery of the fact. Because we always avoid the fact. Whatever the fact be. We have opinions about the fact. We want to do something about the fact. We try to organize so as to act upon the fact. But we never look at the fact. Take a very simple thing that's going on in this unfortunate country. This disease of nationalism. The politicians are inflaming it. And if you observe the fact that nationalities are always at war with each other, they are responsible for wars. The worship of the flag is a symbol. And the symbol is supposed to be unity. But it does not bring unity to the world at all. On the contrary, they are separating people, as religions have done. So that's a fact. Whether you acknowledge or not, it's irrelevant. It's actually taking place in this country. The poison, which never existed before, is being injected into the mind to bring unity. And unity cannot be brought through a flag. Unity cannot be brought about by a symbol. Symbol is merely a word. It's not the actual. And to face that fact, you require all your capacity, all your intelligence to discover what is true. And that means you have to disassociate totally from the collective. And that's very difficult to do, because you might lose your job. You might turn you against your family. The innumerable unconscious difficulties that prevent you from looking at the fact. Take a simple fact again. You call yourselves Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, and God knows what else. And these, you call yourself, and you are made to think through propaganda for centuries that you are this and that. And that doesn't make you a religious person. That doesn't give you the quality of real mind which is religious. You conform to the pattern of organized religion which has religious doctrines, beliefs and dogmas. Now to face that fact, you have to listen to the whole quality of a mind that thinks it is religious. And to so listen implies that you yourself are beginning to disassociate yourself totally from the propaganda which is called religion. So, sirs, to bring about a change within oneself and thereby in the world, and the change must come not through compulsion, not through agreement, not through intellectual words and arguments, but to discover what is true for yourself. for yourself which nobody can tell you. To be a light to oneself which nobody can give you. You say, you agree for the moment, intellectually probably, but after you leave here, you'll still be a Hindu. You'll still be a Christian, a Sikh, a Muslim, or what else, your names and labels. But if you really listened to yourself, to the process of your own thinking, actually observed, then you will see that you're no longer part of the collective. You're no longer part of the tradition. There's already a breaking away. And the breaking away comes not through conscious effort, because the conscious effort is merely a reaction. And every reaction produces its own further reactions. So, if you are listening to what is being said, which is actually listening to yourself, not to the speaker. The speaker is merely pointing out in words. And if you merely follow the words, they lose their meaning, they have no significance at all. But if you listen and face the fact that there is deterioration in the world, perhaps more rapid than before, that the world is being taken over by the politicians, by the tyrants, by reactionary people. I mean by that word reactionary, those who call themselves revolutionaries, who are really tyrannical, because they are reaction. They base their activity and their thought upon reaction, as opposed to capitalism, a reaction which is communism. And reaction is merely further encouragement of what has been only modified. So, observing all these things, that religion has lost completely its meaning. That education is training technicians, not human beings. That modern existence is so utterly superficial. We know all this. What is one to do? How is one to find a way out of this wilderness, this chaos? It all depends how you ask this question. You can ask this question either as a reaction and therefore find an answer which will be still a reaction and not an action in itself. Or you can ask the question which has no answer, because it has no answer. And therefore, because it has no answer, you are thrown back upon yourself Therefore you have to inquire within yourself and not ask a question outside. I do not know if I'm making myself clear on this issue, on this point. One asks questions because one always wants an answer. I have a problem and I want to solve that problem. Therefore I ask a question. I do not want to find the truth of that problem. I do not want to go fully, deeply, irrevocably into that problem, irremediably, but I want to find an answer because I'm disturbed by the problem. So I want a satisfactory, convenient, comforting answer, which will be a reaction. And therefore such a questioning which produces a reaction will only further produce more reactions and therefore more problems. Please, you can apply this to yourselves. You can see it for yourself, the sequence of it, the logical sequence of such a questioning. Or you can question, not seeking and wanting an answer. Because if you question, you will be thrown back upon yourself, and therefore you have to inquire within yourself how your mind thinks. What you think and why you think. Because what you think, why you think, what you feel and why you feel create the problem. And without understanding yourself, merely to ask a question which will give you a satisfactory answer is avoiding the fact, which is that you are the creator of the problem. And not society, not any religion, any present actual state. So it matters a great deal how you ask the question. And you must ask the question. If you ask the question because you want to find a way out of this misery, out of this confusion of the world is in, then you will find some guru, some prophet, some leader who will momentarily satisfy your discontent, your misery. But where are you at the end of it? You are still where you are. Because you have not understood. You are still the maker of the problems. But if you question and not try to seek an answer, but question to find out, and you can only find out through your own thinking, the quality of your own feeling, the emotional nature of your being. So what we are going to do throughout these talks is not give answers to problems that is too cheap and too trivial. But how to look at problems, how to question every problem that life presents. So that you will find by questioning rightly, I mean by rightly, never seeking the answer from anybody, from no book, from no authority, but to understand the whole content of the problem. And for that you need to have a mind that's very clear, sharp, logical, sane, that is capable of facing facts. Then you will see how your mind is nothing, is completely held in the past, in tradition, in memory, in the experiences of many thousand yesterdays. And with that you look at life. The life which is constantly moving, changing, which is never still. So, the mind, which is the result of time, time being past, which shapes every thought, every feeling. With that mind which is the past, which is the result of centuries of time, I'm not going to go into all that. I will during the talks that are to follow, the problem of time, all that. With that mind we are trying to understand this extraordinary change that's going on in the world. We're trying to understand sorrow. We're trying to understand with that mind the future, the unknown. So one has to realize for oneself by questioning the state of one's own mind, not how to resolve the state of the mind. One has to understand it. I mean by that word understand, to look at something without condemnation, to look at something without evaluation, which is extraordinarily difficult for most people, practically for all people. To look, to see, to listen, without bringing in opinions, judgments, condemnation, and justification, just to look. I do not know if you haven't done it. To look without thought. To look at a flower without bringing in all the botanical knowledge, but merely to look. You will find how difficult it is, because the mind is slave to word. The word is far more significant for most of us than the fact. And as long as the mind is slave to the to words, to conclusions, to ideas, it's utterly incapable of looking and understanding. So understanding a fact is not to have an opinion about the fact, but to have the capacity to look. To look without judgment, to look without word. I do not know if you ever looked at a bird or a tree, or looked at the squalor, the filth of these streets. To look. I'm using the word, the squalor, the filth, in the dictionary sense, without any emotional content behind those words. Because you say, when you are capable of looking, fear is gone. There is no fear when you can look. When you can look at yourself, and it is necessary to look at yourself in that way, and that's the only way you can know yourself. Because without knowing yourself, you have no reason to think at all. You have no foundation for any thought. You are merely an automatic machine thinking what you have been told. But if you are able to observe yourself, your ways of your thinking, your activities, how you look at people, what you say, what you do, how you talk, the whole of it, then you will find out of that observation, with that seeing, with that total perception, that very total perception is the energy, is the flame that burns out the past. And then you will know for yourself, when the mind has penetrated deeply within itself, and it has to. Because more and more education, progress, industrialization is making us more and more superficial. And life isn't just industry, going to the office, earning our money and begetting children. Life is something much greater than all that. It includes all those. But the little does not include the greater. The greater includes the lesser. But we are apparently contented with the lesser. And therefore, we are concerned with the immediacy. And life is becoming extraordinarily superficial. And you think by going to some weekly or daily puja or this or that makes you extraordinarily rich, or because you have read half a dozen books, you think you are very clever. All this still very superficial. Depth is not in books, whether it's in the Gita or the Upanishad. It does not lie with any guru. It is not in any temple, church. It is to be found within oneself. You have to dig very deeply. You have to go into it profoundly, step by step, watching every movement of thought, every action of feeling. And then you will find there is no limit, no bottom to the thing that you see. Surely, it's only such a mind then which has completely disassociated itself from society, from tradition, from its morality, and is able to stand completely alone. It's only such a mind can find out whether there is the unnameable, the unknowable. There is. I say there is, but it has no value to you. No value at all. Because you have to find out for yourself. The laboratory is you. You have to tear down, destroy everything to find out. And that's the only revolution that's worth, that has deep meaning. Not the economic, not the social revolution, not the industrial revolution that is taking place in this country. There is only one revolution. That is the revolution in the mind, in consciousness. And that revolution is not brought about by argument, by words, by putting two and two, making various conclusions. That revolution comes deeply, lastingly, precisely when you can go with yourself, never accepting a thing. Therefore, questioning everything. And by that very questioning, which is not the seeking for an answer, you will find that there is an extraordinary revolution taking place without an effort. And it's only such a mind can discover for itself if there is or if there is not the timeless.